Every Christmas we get a card from the Reverend informing us that the weather is temperate. Well, sometimes it is and sometimes it isn't. But I know what he means. The hospital is like a permanent November. One walks through sun and rain, one walks through all kinds of weather to get there. But once sucked inside by the blatting doors, everything is desperately and essentially grey. All the intelligent pain of the victims, all the dreams of the unlistened to, all the entreating eyes, all this is swept up in the fierce rhythm of the hospital. You do good work, Doctor, everyone here tells me. I deny this. I immolate myself in denial. If I died, would he stop? If I am his soul, and there were soul loss or soul death, would that stop him? Or would it make him even freer? I'm not fond of these paradoxes, if paradoxes they are, and I don't expect everybody, or indeed anybody, to see it my way. But you can't end yourself, not here. I am familiar with the idea of suicide, but once life is running, you can't end it. You're not at liberty to do that. We're all here for the duration. Life will end. I know exactly how long I've got. It looks like forever. I feel unique and eternal. Immortality consumes me, and me only. John has become more appreciative of Irene. After several desultory attempts, followed by a brief and nurse-crammed estrangement, and then one big fight, he has re-established their relationship on a sexual footing. I find I'm not as pleased by this as I thought I might be. Jealousy is a new one on me, and amply terrible. Are we to jump to the unlikely conclusion that John's heart has at last been melted by the love of a good woman? A fat woman, too, of a certain age, one who forgives everything and looks over us when we sleep, who is, let's face it, more like a mother than a lover. The turning point or empowering moment came with the telling of Irene's secret. Her words themselves broke a long silence. She was a girl, said Irene. She's with foster parents now, in Pennsylvania. I couldn't look after her. I was suicidal. John snorted and said, That makes two of us. There's something I never told you. I had a child. They were in bed together at the time, staring sadly at the ceiling. Then one thing led to another. It's paradoxical, because John doesn't like women who have children. They can have husbands, they can have as many boyfriends as they want, but no kids. When he accidentally gets talking to women who have children, it's practically the first question he asks them. It's the first test they face. And then nothing ever comes of it. Lots of nurses, plenty of sisters, many matrons, but no mothers. All three of us know that John has a secret. Only one of us knows what that secret is. He leaves it undisclosed, which is perhaps the best thing to do with secrets. Time passes, cars are fatter and fewer, and imitate animals with their fins and wings. Everyone smokes and drinks and messes around. No one works out. Last week they came and took away my colour TV. They gave me a black and white one. I made on the deal. But when I switched it on, my first thought was, uh-oh, there goes world opinion. But world opinion as a force went long ago, really. You can't say exactly when it happened. People don't mind so much what other people are like. So people can be what they are, not minding if others mind. Central Park is cleaner, but no safer. We are fewer. John has started bringing his work home. There's nowhere to hide. There's nowhere to hang in the dark. These prospective lady friends arrive quietly. John, who is ready, receives them quietly. They feel cold and rest and cry for a while, and then mount the cleared table. They assume their half of the missionary position, though John, of course, is busy elsewhere, with the full steel bowl. A rectangular placenta and a baby about 1/2 inch long with a heart but no face are implanted with the aid of forceps and speculum. He is always telling the women to be quiet. They must be quiet. The full bowl bleeds. Next, digital examination and the swab. They can get down now and drink something and talk in whispers. They say goodbye. He'll be seeing them in about 8 weeks on average. I am concluding that these are the bomb babies of Todd Friendly's dreams. It adds up. The babies, so to speak, are helplessly powerful. This is the power they wield. The mortal importance of no one knowing they are there. Naturally, there are asymmetries. In the waking reality, it is the mother who must be silent, not the baby. And these babies are incapable of sound. They have hearts, but no faces, no throats, no mouths to cry. But dreams are like that, aren't they? Dreams enjoy their own obliquity. After all, John Young, who daily straddles a storm of souls, which kick up in the wind like leaves, John Young wears his white coat, but no black boots. He wears gym shoes, or regular loafers, or of course those wooden clogs of his. I don't understand. Irene still comes to the apartment, but we never see her any more except by accident. It's over. She seems cheerful, she seems relieved. Twice a week she vengefully looks in here to dust the place and dirty all the dishes and worry the bed. She leaves like $4 on the kitchen counter, though it's since gone down to $3.50. I don't understand. At the hospital we reward our victims with money. I pay the hospital. Irene pays me. I don't get it. Are we all slaves? Are we somehow less than slaves? They wouldn't believe me even if I could tell them. They would turn away in excruciation and contempt. I'm like the baby taken from the toilet. I have a heart, but I don't have a face. I don't have any eyes to cry. Nobody knows I'm here. Is it a war we are fighting, a war against health, against life and love? My condition is a torn condition. Every day the dispensing of existence. I see the face of suffering. Its face is fierce and distant and ancient. There's probably a straightforward explanation for the impossible weariness I feel. A perfectly straightforward explanation. It is a mortal weariness. Maybe I'm tired of being human, if human is what I am. I'm tired of being human. Chapter 4. You do what you do best, not what's best to do. We set sail for Europe in the summer of 1948. For Europe and for war. Well, I say we, but by now John Young was pretty much on his own out there. Some sort of bifurcation had occurred in about 1959, or maybe even earlier. I was still living inside, quietly, with my own thoughts. Our ship is loud with all the tongues of Europe, under the big sky and its zoo of cumulus, its snow leopards and polar bears. On the lower deck, where all the people are, there is a sense of an outrageous and clarifying happiness. I had taken little notice and no interest in John's furtive and elaborate preparations for travel. The series of interviews with the Reverend Creditor, for example. I didn't really wake up until we made the short boat trip to Ellis Island. His vigour nowadays contains something savage and tasteless. It is pink-tongued. It is feral, undoctored. The whites of his eyes sting like fresh frost. John's torso now closely resembles one of his more miraculous erections. At any moment, and with no warning, he'll throw himself onto the floor and do like 100 push-ups. 99, you'll hear him grunting, ever the literalist. 98, 97, 96. Even during meal times at the captain's table, he's forever girding his muscle and sinew. Under the table, his feet jig on their soles. John's body shudders like the ship itself. This war will start at an appointed time like a ball game. He is 31. We have our own cabin, scene of many a knee bend and chest flex on A deck. There are also communal exercises on B deck, which John leads in association with a swarthy purser called Togliatti. To begin with, in the evenings and mornings, all the people tended to gather at the sharp end of the ship, looking at where they came from, as people do. Only John is invariably to be found on the stern, looking at where we're headed. The ship's route is clearly delineated on the surface of the water and is violently consumed by our advance. Thus, we leave no mark on the ocean, as if we are successfully covering our tracks. We docked at Lisbon. John checked into the hotel and ran around town shuffling papers and permits and palm grease and all the other shit you deal in when you're firming up a fresh identity. We came out the other side of it with a chauffeur, a good profit, and a really first-rate new name. Hamilton de Souza. I am assuming that this identity business is a foible of John's, of Todd's, of Hamilton's, and not universal. Hamilton and I are well established now, of course, in our agreeable villa. It lies in a shallow valley a couple of cliques north of Redondo. Twice a month, the fat lawyer whom I think of as the agent comes to visit in his sweaty suit. We drink fino up on the roof here and converse in formal and limited English. Flowers shine around us in their troughs and pots. "So delightful," says the agent. "We call that one Bouncing Bet," says Hamilton. "Charming." Hamilton points with a finger. "Brown-eyed Susan. So attractive." John go to bed at noon. Below, from the lawn, a muscular blackbird crashes into the air. We have 3 servants, Anna and Lourdes and Rosa. Servants are poor, and I'm talking broke. I mean busted. Rosa, who is poorest of all, lives in the gypsy camp over the slope at the far end of the valley. We sometimes stroll out that way in the evenings and wait and then discreetly precede her when she walks to the villa. She never turns, but she knows we're there. Our hobbies? Well, strolling. Very impeccably turned out in twills and tweed, with hunting cap, with Bustos the dog bouncing at our feet. Our other hobby is gold. We collect it, we amass it. About once a month, with the agent, we motor to Lisbon and pay a call on an elderly Spaniard in his office at the Hotel de Luxe. We have money ready, supplied by the agent. We count the florid banknotes and hand them over across the desk. Then, after the old guy has examined, weighed, and wrapped it in a turquoise napkin, we get our gold in little ingots the size of collar studs. Can you call Rosa a hobby? Does she qualify? A glimpse of Rosa as she walks to the well in her pink tatters, and Hamilton's blood slows and clogs, and his hair hums. Frankly, he's missed the boat with Rosa. She's much too young for Hamilton. Last week she celebrated her 13th birthday, so now she's only 12. In women, what is he looking for? Mother, daughter, sister, wife? Where is his wife? She'd better turn up soon while there's still time. Rosa gives him presents which, on his trips to Lisbon, Hamilton fondly redeems. There are poems to Rosa which he takes from the trash. They are brought in the wicker wastepaper basket by bowing Lourdes, never more than 2 or 3 lines long. The soul of a princess in her gypsy rags, doomed to fret in her humble stall, and Rosa, whose innocence asks to be saved. Where the knight who will deliver her? When he goes out there to wait for her in the evening, I sometimes think it isn't Rosa, it's the camp he loves. The fierce and sentimental music, and the ignorant colours, the prettiness and the disease under the fake gold light, the tuberculosis and syphilis, the fire showing through the branches like illuminated brains, the glamorous nomas of eyes and mouth, the childishness and all the valueless trash. He wants to do something to the camp. What? Here in Portugal he pretends not to be a doctor, probably wisely, and steers well clear of anyone who is sick or injured. But he wants to do something to the camp. He wants to doctor it. Something is savaging his sleep. Surprised into consciousness, alone in the black hemisphere, he cries until he laughs. Somewhere in the severe dance of this roiling sleep I can sense the beginnings of a profound rearrangement, as if everything bad might soon be good, as if everything wrong might soon be right. Admittedly, this new recurring dream of his, in bald summary, doesn't sound particularly encouraging, but I think it is ambivalent and could go either way. He dreams he is shitting human bones. One hot afternoon, I came down from my bedroom after a brief but taxing siesta to see the agent pull up in his outlandish Packard. Over a cognac, he gloomily informs us of the Japanese surrender. Lourdes and Anna, I notice, have tears in their eyes and keep crossing themselves. The agent tells me apologetically about the superstitious fears of these simple people. The end of the world. A bomba atomica. One was not sorry to bid farewell to Portugal and its rhythm of misery and fiesta, the docks, the agent's clueless stare. And one did what one could with the conditions on the sordid steamer. Actually, Hamilton himself looked as grimy and fatalistic as everybody else. There were about 20 passengers. This was no passenger ship. And we slept in the mess, on benches and deck chairs, much resented by the crew, each of us with his possessions or his secret, crushed like a lover in his arms, and whispered to in all the languages of Europe. The other language stoppered in Hamilton's throat. It is climbing to the surface. It twitches inside him. Of course we converse with no man. Just sighs and nods and frowns, speech wavers. They play cards all day. They are low persons, flotsam. What does the war want of them? They look fully disgraced. We have our gold, stored in a second belt beneath our shirt, and tugging heavily on our nethers. I had always thought of Italy as my spiritual home, hence the initial disappointment of Salerno. We stayed in a cheap boarding house from which the landlord saw fit to evict us for all the hours of daylight. Strolling abroad, we devoted our time to church-going and to incoherent altercations with the Italian police. A vaudevillian menace charged our journey to Rome, the locomotive black and chimerical, and the Stazione Termini like an anti-cathedral with its soot-stained glass and vault-like coldness and smell of earth's crust or hell's rafters. Boldly, we made our way through the incredible promiscuity of the streets, men with shoes made out of silver birch bark, women wearing sacks and carpets, children in their dusty birthday suits. Such unanimity of stun and daze. A cordial welcome and a light lunch awaited us at the monastery, Franciscan, on the Via Siciliana. After that, we were off out again. Where to? Where else? The Vatican. We became quite irregular there, as a matter of fact, 9 consecutive mornings, including 2 Sundays. Actually, Father Duria, our contact, our man, always saw us right away, but that didn't stop Hamilton hanging around for hours afterwards in the waiting room. Tense, silent, on the chair by the table with its flower bowl and its dish of cracked apples. Father Duria was an Irishman. His rampant facial heat had set up its headquarters in his nose. From there, stray tendrils of blood seemed to leak into his remorseful grey eyes. Hamilton greeted him with emotional thanks and immediately surrendered our papers. Our little Nansen passport, our Portuguese visa, even the ticket coupon with which we had been issued at the harbour of Salerno. Father Duria appeared to be hopeful and indulgent. But these things take time. Time in the monastery on the Via Siciliana, where Hamilton seems to have taken his own vow of silence. We have our own little cell. The monastery is full of wayfarers like me, ghosts with half a name. I feel I'm between names at the moment. The Vatican is full of supplicants like me, calling Father, Father. Europe probably is full of people like me adjusting our stance for the lurch into war. Shame heats our cell, and press-ups and prayers. Yes, prayers. His prayers are like the noise you make to drown out an insupportable thought. I might be impressed and affected by this sudden talent for suffering, if it weren't for its monotony. Fear, just fear. Fear only. Why? Yet with hands clasped, he whimpers and gibbers with such desperate ardour for his own preservation, on his knees, to show good faith or to show something. He tried a thing with, the chair, the belt suspended from the rafter. It didn't work, needless to say. We help those that need, said Father Durea on our final visit, not those that deserve. You do what you do best, said Hamilton, not what's best to do. I'll do what I can. I can't explain what I did. I can't ask you to help me. Ah, now. I'm nothing. I'm dead. I'm not even. Father Duria sat up, and so did I. In a deep and distant voice, Hamilton went on. I lost my idea of the gentleness of human flesh. So, sense. Here it comes. It's all coming out. It's been in here too long, and now it's all coming out. Explain, said Father Duria. We lost our feeling about the human body. Children even. Tiny babies. Father Duria's face contracted around the scorched core of his nose, and he said, I understand. You know where I was. In a situation like that, certain acts suggested themselves. I understand, my son. The situation was mad and impossible. There's no need to say. Hamilton moistened his cheeks with his sleeve and sniffed richly. There were things... Speak. I still want to heal, Father. Perhaps that way, by doing good. Hell? I have been to hell. Of course, of course. I have sinned, Father. You seem troubled, my child. At this point, Hamilton handed over our various laissez-passer, and Father de Rea presented him with his new documents. Before doing so, Father de Rea stared at them for many arduous minutes, stared at them with his bleeding eyes. Our parting was marked by the usual formalities, the usual compliments paid to my unimprovable English. Hamilton and I spent our last night in Rome at a very respectable hotel on the Via Garibaldi, near the high walls of the prison. We even had our own bathroom, in whose tub we wallowed for well over an hour. Clean breast, clean hands. Our name has changed once more. We are now called Odilo Unverdorben. And clean heels. Our journey north was charmed. We were the baton in a relay race to war. By train to Bologna, by truck to Rovereto, thenceforward we moved in daily spurts of 20 or 25 miles, always accompanied or monitored from village to village, farm to farm, on foot, by cart, in preposterous automobiles. March and February we spent on the Brenner, where we lodged at 3 different farmsteads. Personally, I longed for human society and for exercise, but no doubt Odilo had his reasons. Had his reasons for those weeks spent in hayloft and cowshed under a mound of blankets with nothing to do but pray and shiver. It was snowing on the day we resumed our northward journey. By jeep and lorry we moved swiftly up through the towns and cities of Middle Europe. Much of it was junk and trash, awaiting collection by war. Buildings were black, awaiting the colour of fire. People were smudged, trampled, awaiting the hooves and treads of armies. Everywhere I went, their expressions charged with power and delight. Men gave me gold. I knew all this gold was sacred and indispensable to our mission. Accordingly, at the final staging post, the final farm within view of the river Vistula, where we lived well and warmly, and there were the heads of children to pat and tousle, and the striped mattresses before the fire, we buried our gold. Swearing most eloquently and solemnly, we buried the pouched filings under a compost heap behind the barn. Of course, the act was merely symbolic, the gold's temporary return to the earth, because we dug it up again 5 days later after the compost heap had gone. Chapter 5. Here, there is no why. The world is going to start making sense. Now. I, Odilo Unverdorben, arrived in Auschwitz Central somewhat precipitately and by motorbike, with a wide twirl or frill of slush and mud, shortly after the Bolsheviks had entrained their ignoble withdrawal. Now. Was there a secret passenger on the back seat of the bike, or in some imaginary sidecar? No. I was one. I was also in full uniform. Beyond the southern boundary of the lager, in a roofless barn, I slipped out of our coarse travelling clothes and emotionally donned the black boots, the white coat, the fleece-lined jacket, the peaked cap, the pistol. The motorbike I found earlier wedged into a ditch. Oh, how I soared out of there, with what vaulting eagerness, what daring! Now I straddled this heavy machine and revved with jerk gauntlet. Auschwitz lay around me, miles and miles of it like a somersaulted Vatican. Human life was all ripped and torn, but I was one now, fused for a preternatural purpose. Your shoulder blades still jolted to the artillery of the Russians as they scurried eastward. What had they done here? Done something as an animal does. Just finds it's gone ahead and done it. I reacted on impulse. To tell the truth, I was in less than perfect control of myself. I started shouting. They sounded like shouts of pain and rage. And at whom? At these coat hangers and violin bows, at these H's and queries and crawling W's, ranked like tabloid expletives? I marched, shouting over the bridge and across all the railway tracks and into the Birchwood, into the place I would come to know as Birkenau. After a short and furious rest in the potato store, I entered the women's hospital, inflexibly determined on an inspection. It was not appropriate. I see that now. It was a swoon of where to begin. My arrival only deepened the stupefaction of the few orderlies, never mind the patients, sprawled 2 or 3 to a straw sack, and still well short of the size of a woman. And rats as big as cats. I was astonished by the power with which my German crashed out of me, as if in millennial anger at having been silenced for so long. In the washroom, another deracinating spectacle. Marks and Pfennigs, good tender, stuck to the wall with human ordure. A mistake. A mistake. Even on my return through the ward, past ulcer and edema, past sleepwalker and sleep talker, I could feel the hungry suck of it on the soles of my black boots. That first morning I was served a rudimentary breakfast in the officer's home. I felt quite calm, though I could neither eat nor drink. With my ham and cheese, which were not of my making, they brought me iced seltzer. There was only one other officer present. I was keen to exercise my German, but we didn't speak. He held his coffee cup as a woman does, with both palms curled around it for the warmth, and you could hear the china tapping its morse against his teeth. During week 2, the camp started filling up, in dribs and drabs at first, then in flocks and herds. All this I watched through a spy-hole, under a workbench in a disused supply hut towards the birchwood, with blanket, kummer bottle, and rosary fingered like an abacus, as I counted them in. The hearty trek and the bracing temperatures had obviously done the men good, though their condition on arrival still left much to be desired, and there weren't enough of them. As in a dream, one was harrowed by questions of scale, by impenetrable disparities. In their hundreds, even in their thousands, these stragglers could never fill the gaping universe of the KZ. Another source, another powerhouse was desperately needed. The short days were half over by the time I ventured from the hut, where my motorbike was also preserved. I kept examining it in a fond fever. The officers' clubroom was busier now, and there were always new arrivals. It felt strange. No, it felt right that we should all know each other, as it were, automatically. We who had gathered here for a preternatural purpose. My German worked like a dream, like a brilliant robot you switch on and stand back and admire as it does all the hard work. Courage was arriving too, in uniformed human units, the numbers and the special daring adequate to the task we faced. By the end of the second week, our clubhouse was the scene of strident song and bold laughter. One night, bumping into the doorway and stepping over a colleague, I made my way out into the sleet, the toilets all being occupied, and as I crouched, I peered through the reeking shadows of Auschwitz, and saw that the nearest ruins were fuming more than ever, and had even begun to glow. There was a new smell in the air, the sweet smell. We needed magic to resolve significance from what surrounded us, which scarcely permitted contemplation. We needed someone godlike, someone who could turn this world around. And in due course he came, not a tall man, but of the usual dimensions, coldly beautiful, true, with self-delighted eyes, graceful, chasteningly graceful in his athletic authority, and a doctor. Yes, a simple doctor. Flashing through the birchwood came the white Mercedes-Benz, from which he leapt in his greatcoat and then dashed across the yard, yelling out orders. I knew his name, and murmured it as I looked on from the supply hut, with my schnapps and my toilet paper. Uncle Pepe. The trash and wreckage before him was now shivering with fire as he stood, hands on hips, watching all his powers gather in the smoke. I turned slowly away and felt the rush and zip of violently animated matter. When, with a shout, I jerked my eye back to its hole, there was no smoke anywhere, only the necessary building, perfect, even to the irises, and the low picket fence that lined its path, before which Uncle Pepe now stood, with one arm crooked and raised. Even to the large sign above the door, Browserbad, sprinkler room, I whispered with a reverent snort. But now Uncle Pepe moved on. That morning, as I lay with my teeth chattering in anticipation on the wooden floor of the supply hut, I heard 5 more explosions, velocity and fusion sucking up the shocked air. By the next day, we were ready to go to work. What tells me that this is right? What tells me that all the rest was wrong? Certainly not my aesthetic sense. I would never claim that Auschwitz-Birkenau Monowitz was good to look at, or to listen to, or to smell, or to taste, or to touch. Not for its elegance did I come to love the evening sky, hellish red with the gathering souls. Creation is easy, also ugly. Hier ist kein Warum. Here there is no why. Here there is no when, no how, no where. Our perpetual purpose? To dream a race. To make a people from the weather, from thunder and from lightning, with gas, with electricity, with shit, with fire. I, or a doctor of equivalent rank, was present at every stage in the sequence. One did not need to know why the ovens were so ugly, so very ugly. A tragically burly insect, 8 feet tall and made out of rust. Who would want to cook with an oven such as this? Pulleys, plungers, grates, and vents were the organs of the machine. The patients, still dead, were delivered out on a stretcher-like apparatus. The air felt thick and warped with the magnetic heat of creation. Thence to the chamber where the bodies were stacked carefully and, in my view, counterintuitively, with babies and children at the base of the pile, then the women and the elderly, and then the men. It was my stubborn belief that it would be better the other way round, because the little ones surely risked injury under that press of naked weight. But it worked. Sometimes I would monitor proceedings through the viewing slit. There was usually a long wait while the gas was invisibly introduced by the ventilation grills. The dead looked so dead. Dead bodies have their dead body language. It says nothing. I always felt a gorgeous relief at the moment of the first stirring. Then it was ugly again. Well, we cry and twist and are naked at both ends of life. We cry at both ends of life, while the doctor watches. It was I, Odilo Unverdorben, who personally removed the pellets of Zyklon B and entrusted them to the pharmacist in his white coat. Next, the facade of the sprinkler room, the function of whose spouts and nozzles, and numbered seats and wardrobe tickets and signs in 6 or 7 languages, was merely to reassure and not, alas, to cleanse, and the garden path beyond. Clothes, spectacles, hair, spinal braces, and so on, these came later. Entirely intelligibly, though, to prevent needless suffering, the dental work was usually completed while the patients were not yet alive. The capos would go at it crudely but effectively, with knives or chisels or any tool that came to hand. Most of the gold we used, of course, came direct from the Reichsbank. But every German present, even the humblest, gave willingly of his own store. I, more than any other officer, save Uncle Pepe himself. I knew my gold had a sacred efficacy. All those years I amassed it and polished it with my mind, for the Jews' teeth. The bulk of the clothes was contributed by the Reich Youth Leadership. Hair for the Jews came courtesy of Filzfabrik AG of Roth, near Nuremberg. Freight cars full of it. Freight car after freight car. At this point, notwithstanding, I should like to log one of several possible caveats or reservations. In the sprinkler room, the patients eventually get dressed in the clothes provided. Here, the guards have a habit of touching the women. Sometimes, certainly, to bestow a jewel, a ring, a small valuable. But at other times, quite gratuitously. Oh, I think they mean well enough. It is done in the irrepressible German manner, coltishly, and with lit face. And they only do it to the angry ones. And it definitely has the effect of calming them down. One touch, there, and they all go numb and blocked like the others, who wail sometimes, who stare at us with incredulous scorn. But I understand their condition. I'm sympathetic. I accept all that. It may be symbolic, this touching of the women. Life and love must go on. Life and love must emphatically and resonantly go on. Here, that's what we're all about. Yet there is a patina of cruelty, intense cruelty, as if creation corrupts. I don't want to touch the girls' bodies. As is well known, I frown on such harassment. I don't even want to look at them. The bald girls with their enormous eyes, just made and all raw from their genesis. I'm a little worried by it. I mean, this fastidiousness is so out of character. The delicacy of the situation, with their parents and often their grandparents there, and everything as in a thwarted erotic dream, would hardly explain the lack of visual stimulation. And I get on like a house on fire with the girls in the office's bordello. No, I think it must have something to do with my wife. The overwhelming majority of the women, the children, and the elderly we process with gas and fire. The men, of course, as is right, walk a different path to recovery. Arbeit macht frei, says the sign on the gate, with typically gruff and undesigning eloquence. The men work for their freedom. There they go now, in the autumn dusk, the male patients in their light pyjamas while the band plays. They march in ranks of 5 in their wooden clogs. Look, there's a thing they do with their heads. They bend their heads right back until their faces are entirely open to the sky. I've tried it. I try to do it, and I can't. There's this fist of flesh at the base of my neck, which the men don't yet have. There they go to the day's work with their heads bent back. I was puzzled at first, but now I know why they do it, why they stretch their throats like that. They are looking for the souls of their mothers and their fathers, their women and their children gathering in the heavens, awaiting human form and union. The sky above the Vistula is full of stars. I can see them now. They no longer hurt my eyes. These familial unions and arranged marriages, known as selections on the ramp, were the regular high points of the KZ routine. It is a commonplace to say that the triumph of Auschwitz was essentially organizational. We found the sacred fire that hides in the human heart and built an autobahn that went there. But how to explain the divine synchronies of the ramp? At the very moment that the weak and young and old were brought from the sprinkler room to the railway station as good as new, so their menfolk completed the appointed term of labour service and ventured forth to claim them on the ramp, a trifle dishevelled to be sure, but strong and sleek from their regime of hard work and strict diet. When the families coalesced, how their hands and eyes would plead for one another under our indulgent gaze. We toasted them far into the night. One guard, his knees bent and swaying, played an accordion. Actually, we all drank like fiends. The stag party on the ramp and the capos, like the groom's best friends, shoving the man into the waiting cart, freshly sprayed with trash and shit for the journey home. The Auschwitz universe, it has to be allowed, was fiercely coprocentric. It was made of shit. In the early months, I still had my natural aversion to overcome before I understood the fundamental strangeness of the process of fruition. I found it salutary to watch the Scheiße Commando about its work. This team had the job of replenishing the ditches from the soil wagon, not with buckets or anything like that, but with flat wooden spades. The Scheiße Commando was made up of our most cultured patients, academics, rabbis, writers, philosophers. As they worked, they sang arias and whistled scraps of symphonies and recited poetry and talked about Heine and Schiller and Goethe. In the officers' club where we are drinking, which we nearly always are, and where shit is constantly mentioned and invoked, we sometimes refer to Auschwitz as Anus Mundi. And I can think of no finer tribute than that. The main Auenraum is called Heaven Block, its main approach road, Heaven Street. Chamber and sprinkler room are known most mordantly as the Central Hospital. Sommerfrische is our name for a tour of duty here, in any season. Summer air. When we mean never, we say tomorrow morning. It's like the Spanish saying mañana. The slenderest patients, those whose faces are nothing more than a triangle of bone around the eyes, they're Musselmänner. Not, as I first thought, as an ironical glance at musclemen. No. The angularity of hip and shoulder suggests Muslims, Muslims at prayer. Of course, they're not Muslims, they're Jews. Well, we converted them. When will it happen, the conversion of the Jews? Tomorrow morning. Hier ist kein Warum. Disappointingly, my German fails to improve. I speak it and appear to understand it, and give and take orders in it, but on some level it just isn't sinking in. My German is more advanced than my Portuguese. I think it took a lot out of me learning colloquial English. That was my shot. It's a funny language, German. For one thing, everybody shouts it. All those very long words, the literalism, the tinker-toy accumulation. It sounds pushy beginning every sentence with a verb like that. In the office's bordello, I have changed the amatory habits of a lifetime. It may be an awareness of my married status, of which my colleagues often jokingly remind me, or a way of squaring all my activities with the ethos of the KZ, or a simple boredom with the female race. But now my thrusts of love, so sudden, so hurried, so helpless, so hopeless, are exclusively directed at the source of universal sustenance and fruition. I have started corresponding with my wife, whose name is Herta. My letters are in German, though they contain gobbets of English, which are playfully pedagogic in tone. I think it makes sense that Herta and I should get to know each other in this way. We're pen pals. It seems that my wife has already conceived her doubts about the work we are doing here. There is also the matter of the baby. Das Baby. My darling, my one, my all. There will be other babies. I write somewhat confusingly. There will be lots of little babies. I don't much like the sound of this. Is das Baby, the bomb baby? The baby that has such power over its parents? I don't think so. Our baby, which has a name, Eva, exerts colossal power as a subject, but not the physical power that the bomb baby exerted over its parents and over everybody else in the black room, some 30 souls. I was privileged, and on something like a regular basis, to assist Uncle Pepe in room 1 on block 20 and later in block 10 itself. I recognized room 1 from my dreams. The pink rubber apron on its hook, the instrument bowls and thermoses, the bloody cotton, the half-pint hypodermic with its foot-long needle. Already showing signs of life, patients were brought in one by one from the pile next door and wedged onto the chair in room 1, which looked like what it was, a laboratory in the Hygienic Institute, a world of bubbles and bottles. With the syringe there were 2 ways to go, intravenous and cardiac, Uncle Pepe tending to champion the latter as more efficient and humane. We did both. Cardiac, the patient blindfolded with a towel, his right hand placed in the mouth to stifle his own whimpers, the needle eased into the dramatic furrow of the 5th rib space. Intravenous, the patient with his forearm on the support table, the rubber tourniquet, the visible vein, the needle, the judicious dab of alcohol. Uncle Pepe was then sometimes obliged to bring them to their senses with a few slaps about the face. The corpses were pink and blue bruised. Death was pink but yellowish, and contained in a glass cylinder labelled phenol. A day of that, and you stroll out in your white coat and black boots, with the familiar headache and the plangent perfecto, and the breakfast tannic gathering in your throat, and the eastward sky looked like phenol. He led, we followed. Phenol work became absolutely routine. All of us did it the whole time. It wasn't until later that I saw what Uncle Pepe was capable of, in Block 10. My wife Herta paid her first visit to Auschwitz in the spring of 1944, which was perhaps unfortunate. We were then doing the Hungarian Jews, and at an incredible rate, something like 10,000 a day. Unfortunate, because I was on ramp duty practically every night, finding the work somewhat impersonal too, the selections now being made by loudspeaker, such was the weight of traffic, and having little to do but stand there drinking and shouting with my colleagues, thus denying her to the kind of undivided attention that every young wife craves. Everything was ready for her. Thoughtful as ever, Dr. Wirths had made available the annex of his own living quarters. I was sitting on the sofa, quietly crying. As I heard the staff car approach, I wandered out into the pale brown of the front garden. What did I expect? The familiar awkwardness, I suppose. Reproaches, accusations, sadness. All to be at least partly resolved that first night in the act of love. Or certainly the second. That's how these things usually begin. What I didn't expect was a statement of truth. The truth was the last thing I was ready for. I should have known. The world, after all, here in Auschwitz, has a new habit. It makes sense.